There are moments in life when silence feels heavier than any word. When the room is filled with everything unsaid, apologies that never came, explanations that will never make sense, and the hollow echo of trust that once felt unbreakable. This is where forgiveness begins, not with peace, but with pain. Her name was Maya. To anyone looking from the outside, she had built a good life, a stable job, close friends, a husband she believed in. But one quiet evening, while scrolling through messages on a shared laptop, she stumbled upon a truth that would dismantle the world she thought she knew. An affair. Not just a moment of weakness, but a sustained lie, carefully layered over months. The discovery was ordinary in the way heartbreak often is. Quiet, almost mundane. No shouting at first. No cinematic explosion of anger. Just the soft click of a laptop closing. The stillness of someone realizing that love had been rewritten without their consent. For weeks, Maya lived in a blur. Workdays passed mechanically. Meals tasted like air. Nights were long, filled with replays of every conversation she had ever had with him. Every smile, every "I love you," every time he had looked at her without flinching while keeping a secret. And then came the questions, not the kind that seek answers, but the kind that haunt. Was I not enough? How could he? Why me? But the hardest one, how do I live with this pain without becoming it? One night, after days of emotional numbness, Maya sat in her car outside their home. The rain drummed on the windshield like a relentless heartbeat. She gripped the steering wheel, not sure whether to drive away or walk inside and end it all. The marriage, the conversation, the pretending. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. Just 3 words. "I'm thinking of you." That small act, the simple awareness of being seen, cracked something open inside her. She cried for hours. And in that breaking, something profound began. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of the journey toward it. Because healing often starts in moments of unbearable honesty, when you realize that anger and love can coexist, that you can grieve for what was and still wish peace for what remains. Weeks later, Maya met her husband for the first time since their separation. They sat across from each other in a small cafe that once held their laughter. The silence between them was thick with memory. He spoke first, a shaky apology, heavy and raw. He wept. And for a fleeting second, she saw the brokenness in him, not as an excuse, but as evidence of his humanity. And that's when it struck her. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing what he did. It was about freeing herself from what it had done to her. That's the paradox of forgiveness. It's not a gift to the offender. It's liberation for the one who was hurt. In that cafe, Maya didn't say, "I forgive you." She didn't have to. Forgiveness wasn't a sentence to speak. It was a direction to walk in. A quiet, conscious choice to let go of the poison before it consumed her. Forgiveness, psychologists say, is less about forgetting and more about reframing. It's an active process, the brain reinterpreting emotional trauma, rewriting the neural narrative of pain. Studies from Stanford and the University of Wisconsin show that people who practice forgiveness experience lower cortisol levels, reduced symptoms of anxiety and depression, and improved cardiovascular health. But beyond biology lies something more profound. Forgiveness is psychological alchemy. It turns pain into wisdom, resentment into release, and memory into meaning. When Maya began therapy, her counselor asked her a question she would never forget. If your heart were a house, which rooms are you still locking because of fear? She sat quietly for a long time before whispering, "All of them." Healing, the counselor said, doesn't mean opening every door at once. It means turning the handle, one at a time, until you no longer need to hide. Forgiveness is not an emotion. It's an act of rebellion, a refusal to let pain define the rest of your story. It's saying, "I choose peace, not because you deserve it, but because I do." That is what makes forgiveness psychologically radical. It interrupts the feedback loop of suffering that trauma tries to trap us in. It dismantles the architecture of bitterness before it hardens into identity. Because every time you replay the betrayal, your body relives it. Heart rate rises, muscles tighten, stress hormones surge. But the moment you begin to let go, the nervous system shifts. The storm inside starts to settle, and you remember what it feels like to breathe again. Months later, Maya stood on a quiet beach. The air was cold, the tide low. She had come there alone, holding a letter she had written but never planned to send. In it, she told her ex-husband everything she never said aloud: the pain, the confusion, the grief, but also the understanding that forgiveness wasn't reconciliation. It was reclamation. She folded the letter, tucked it under a stone, and let the wind take the last of her tears. In that silence, something shifted, not dramatically, but deeply. It wasn't closure. It was clarity. Forgiveness didn't erase what happened. It simply meant she refused to carry it any longer. And as she turned to leave, she smiled, not because she was over it, but because she was finally free of it. Forgiveness is not the end of the story. It's the turning point. The moment when the wound stops defining you and starts teaching you. It's a conscious choice that promotes emotional healing, enhances psychological well-being, and improves mental health by reducing stress, anxiety, and depression. It does not mean condoning the offense, forgetting, or requiring reconciliation. Instead, it is a personal process for one's own peace of mind and resilience. So, what happens inside the human mind when we choose to forgive? Why does the act of letting go feel like both a surrender and a victory? And what does it reveal about the architecture of our emotional resilience? About the parts of us that refuse to stay broken? Let's go deeper. To be continued in Part 2, The Anatomy of Letting Go, the Psychology of Forgiveness. Subscribe to Abbey Whispers for more cinematic explorations into philosophy, psychology, and ancient wisdom.